Welcome to the Chop Shop, boys.
Greetings all, welcome to the Chop Shop, the channel of builds, kit bashes, restorations, and conversions. In this episode, I'll be showing you how I made a large set of tree-lined scatter terrain for use on snowy and non-snowy game boards and mats. As is common in our hobby, I got into miniature painting when I was but a wee lad, engaging with it on and off for about a decade before putting it aside shortly after entering university. About 5 years ago, after 15 or so years away, I returned to the hobby as a form of therapy to help me get through the soul-grinding world of adulthood and the 40-hour work week. Since then, I focused my hobby time almost exclusively on painting models intended for gaming, mostly Games Workshop products, but also bolt-action models from Warlord Games and a few for miniature-heavy board games like Nemesis. While I dabbled a bit in painting terrain, I found it difficult to justify the time expenditure required to paint or make terrain pieces that satisfied my personal standards of quality. In the choice between painting models to play with versus painting models to play on, the former was simply more important. About a year ago, however, I made the decision to periodically weave terrain projects into my hobby pipeline. The first to be completed were 4 sets of the classic Ruined Farmhouse by Warlord Games. These I finished about 6 months ago. Before that, and still ongoing, my friend Dave and I started on a massive 28mm scale version of the Schwer Gustav, which is to serve as a centerpiece for a future railway and industrial center game board for bolt action. While there are plans for a Gustav video in the future, the project is currently on hold as I don't yet have the setup to really dive into it. The latest terrain project, the progress of which you are watching on screen now, is a collection of short tree-lined scatter terrain. I recently finished the Soviet half of Gale Force 9's Clash of Steel starter box, and wanted a nice set of terrain to play games on. As the Soviet tanks play a starring role in the next pen and paint video, the trees would also work well for a lovely thumbnail photoshoot, so I decided to dedicate a solid week and a half of hobby time cranking these puppies out. The tree hillocks I'm making are relatively straightforward to produce. The bases are made from 1/8 MDF boards that I had lying about and are built up with 2 layers of cork sheets. I made a variety of natural-esque footprints to provide a diversity of gaming experiences. The texture paste is a simple combination of white glue, fine sand, and water. As I wanted the terrain to be suitable for the smaller 15mm scale of Clash of Steel, I opted for a more paste consistency with a high glue content to create a fairly smooth surface. The result are robust pieces that should withstand several years of gaming. The trees I'd been sitting on for a while, having found them at our local RC and hobby model shop, Paradise Valley RC. Their size makes them suitable for a wide range of gaming scales, so while I've used them specifically for 15mm models, they'll work perfectly for 28 or 32mm games as well. I drilled and positioned all the trees ahead of time, both to avoid damaging the paint job, as well as to ensure that if any trees needed to be relocated, old holes could be filled with texture paste without needing to be repainted. Having the holes in place ahead of time will also help the painting process, as we'll see shortly. Even without paint, the terrain already looks great, and I could easily have stopped here if I wasn't gung-ho on getting them done now. In order to account for possible future tournament-style games, I made sure to produce enough copies of each terrain shape to allow for symmetric table layouts. Each shape has 2 copies of each chirality, that is, 2 left-hand and 2 right-hand pieces. The letters A and B written on the undersides indicate handedness, while the numbers indicate player. The result is that I can now set up two different types of table symmetries. By switching numbers between sides, we produce rotational symmetry, while switching letters produces mirror symmetry. Before painting the tanks, I knew I wanted to go with an alpine or late winter theme, and picked up a dedicated playmat to match the army aesthetics. Because most of our games would be small skirmishes, I picked up a 4x4 foot Tundra fat mat from Table War and used it as a very rough guideline for painting the tree lines. I started with a healthy coat of Wilderness and Woodlands Game Master Terrain Primer by the Army Painter, which is suitable for MDF boards. For paints, I broke out the big tubes of artist acrylics and, using the playmat as a guide, roughed out the main color, starting with a fairly bright green base and sponging on what I thought would be a suitable dark brown while the pieces were still wet. The resulting blend is intentionally imperfect. The process is designed to produce a quick, variegated base, that is a multi-tonal green-brown base that the eye won't read as a single flat color. This could also be done with dry brushing, but I didn't want to pick up surface texture highlights, and this is also just a much faster way as we're working wet on wet. The only bit of detail work is to darken recesses and areas directly under the trees to simulate restricted growth, as well as to add fairly subdued highlights on the raised edges. Large portions of these pieces will ultimately be covered in flock, so there's no point in spending more time than we have to. The pre-drilled holes give us a guide for where the tree shadows will be. The result is something that looks like, well, a gross avocado. With the trees firmly glued in place, we can see which section of the ground would be exposed to the sun and therefore where the bulk of our grasses should be. I used a fine, spongy flock for the grass base that wasn't much brighter than the avocado, applying it over a 50-50 mix of PVA glue and water. Once it had dried, I sealed everything with a healthy spray of matte varnish to both fix the flocking and tone down the gloss of the paint. To better color match the matte, I followed this up with a brighter green fibrous grass, applying it sparingly to the inside areas of the previously applied base layer. I had only 3 tiny packets of grass which came with some other hobby supplies, so I couldn't be too judicious. This was followed by another spray of matte varnish. There being more than enough trees for a single board when combined with other terrain features like rock outcroppings and country buildings, I split the pieces between winter and non-winter themes so the terrain could be used in other seasonal contexts. To this end, I added minor snow effects to all of the B pieces. The snow itself is a combination of all game terrain base layer snow mixed with equal parts PVA glue and some water to thin. I'm looking for a late winter, early spring feel, a time of year when the last snows have fallen and everything is melting. Because of that, I opted not to sprinkle snow on the still wet piles as I wanted no fresh snow. I have to say, the end results look pretty darn good. The pieces are sturdy and the colors look great on the game mat. The only thing I might do at a future date is add small amounts of water effects around the snow to give it a melty feel. Outside that though, I'm extremely pleased with the pieces and it's given me confidence to try my hand at other, larger terrain features. I'm looking forward to getting in a few games of Clash of Steel with these beautiful tree lines. That's it for today. I hope you folks enjoyed this little video and perhaps were inspired to try and make your own scattered tree lines. If you have any questions or ideas of your own that you'd like to share, please comment below. And if you have enjoyed the video, why not give it a like? Maybe even subscribe. See you next time.